Hey everyone, welcome back to the Grow Podcast by Farmers Cooperative. I'm your host, Nolan Fast, and today we're sitting down with Wesley Hedges, the Precision Ag Manager for Farmers Cooperative, and Troy Piening, who's a Farmers Cooperative customer and a local farmer. And we're going to talk a little bit about different technologies in ag. So, Troy, why don't you start off, tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization.
I'm a small farmer, just west of Lincoln here. Farmer approximately about 1,000 acres.
Okay.
I just be me and my son, and my dad's retired and stuff. Took over the farming operation.
So what do you grow?
We grow corn and soybeans, pretty much a 50-50 rotation.
Okay. And how long have you been working with Wesley?
It's been probably about 3-4 years now.
Okay.
And stuff going on probably about 4 years since we started with the farm program.
Yeah. Pretty good relationship so far.
Yeah, pretty decent, yeah.
Good to hear.
So what parts of what precision ag services technologies do you use for your farm?
We do variable rate fertilizer, nitrogen. We do variable rate planting and stuff. We do yield mapping, moisture. We use a moisture test machine or whatever.
Soil moisture sensors.
Yeah, soil moisture sensors.
Is there any fancy precision ag equipment that you have on your equipment? On the tractors and combine. Yeah,
I mean we have. We use auto steer and all that on the tractor. We have precision planting set up on our planter, which is we use electric drives, variable rates. We have the hydraulic downforce. We use precision planting, smart firmers, and then I'm trying to think here what else. We got row cleaners and stuff.
So out of all these things, is there anything that brings you maybe more value than something else? Is there something that you couldn't live without? What are some of the better things that you think maybe if someone else is on the fence about using them?
I would say the biggest thing is probably the hydraulic downforce is probably the biggest benefit we've seen, and then having the capabilities of variable rating is we use that quite a bit and stuff, and that's where we use Farmers Cooperative and Wesley here to help.
Well, so Wesley, tell us a little bit about yourself. How long have you been Precision Ag Manager? Is that what you started out with at Farmers Cooperative, or did you?
So I guess it's a little bit of a background. I'm actually from Northwest Oklahoma.
Oh.
Have been involved in farming and ranching pretty much my whole life. Went on to college at Oklahoma State University and got my bachelor's and master's in agronomy.
You have a master's?
Yes.
Learn something new every day.
My master's thesis was in starter fertilizer management in corn and soybeans. So fit in really well with where I ended up here in Nebraska, since we're pretty much all corn and soybeans. Met my wife at Oklahoma State University, and that's kind of, so my wife and I both graduated at the same time, and we both found a job up here in Nebraska. That's kind of how we ended up here in Nebraska. I actually started at a retailer with just a precision ag specialist position, and did that for a little over 2 years. And then this position here at Farmers Cooperative became available, and couldn't pass it up. So that was about 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago, and here we are.
So you two, I might be skipping ahead a little bit, but you two did a little test, use like a variable rate versus uniform rate test. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, kind of what you did, what the results were?
Yeah, so about a year ago, Troy and I he had a couple fields left anhydrous, and I don't know who started the conversation, but we were like, well, let's put together an on-farm research trial and see, what it looks like when we do variable rate nitrogen and variable rate seed in comparison to uniform nitrogen and seed. So yeah, I mean, basically on that trial we used 2 fields. We used the entire field for both of those fields, and we put variable rate strips and uniform rate strips throughout the length and width of the whole field.
Yeah, how many acres that was?
Both fields are approximately 50, just a little over 50 acres.
Okay.
Each field was.
And so what were the findings when you were done?
Yeah, so one thing the reason we wanted to use an entire field is so that we can get as many replications in as possible. And what that would do would allow us to be a little more confident in the results when we did get the yield data back. So one of the fields, yield-wise, was a 7 bushel advantage for variable rate, 203 for the uniform rate, and then 210 bushel for the variable rate field, and that comes out to about a $21 per acre return on investment after taking into account the cost of ProFarm and creating those prescriptions.
Yeah, so that's the cost after it's all said and done.
Yeah, and the variable rate actually used the same amount of product as the uniform rate. We're just redistributing where that product is going.
So was that a good experience for you, or?
Yeah, I think it was something that we wanted to kind of measure, where were we getting a benefit from doing this?
Have that concrete.
Yeah, and get some actual evidence that, hey, this made a difference and stuff versus just
taking Wesley's word for it.
Yeah, and going with that. And we were, just looking to kind of verify kind of what we had sort of felt before without the actual knowing that we were making a difference or not, having a positive.
So is that, would you say that's close to the average, result? So other farmers would have a similar result if they were to.
Yeah, so on average, what I've seen is about a 5 to 12 bushel per acre increase when you're talking about variable rating, seed and nitrogen. And I think it's important to do, if you can, do both seed and nitrogen, because if you just variable rated seed, you might find that you don't see any difference because maybe it was the nitrogen that was actually limiting that particular season. Yeah.
So Wesley, there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of new technology. Computers basically double in speed. I believe it's every 18 months. So what are some of the new technologies or new software that you're seeing coming out that maybe have you a little excited or at least curious to learn more?
Yeah. So it seems like just here recently, just within the last couple years anyway, satellite imagery, aircraft imagery, drone imagery has really started to take off. And I think that's maybe partly due to the software capabilities and, like you said, internet speed, or just technology is always increasing in speed. And what that allows is that imagery to be processed faster, to be uploaded to the cloud faster, and back in the hands of the producer on his phone a lot quicker, so where he can view that information right away. I guess on the drone imagery, we kind of have it's a new offering that's pretty neat. So basically we go out and we fly the field with the drone, and when that data is uploaded to the cloud, the software can calculate stand counts.
Oh, wow.
And not just do that, like, so if we were to go out there physically, we'd go out and do stand counts in 3 or 4 areas in the field, and you know, there's 160 acres. You don't really have that good of an idea of what the entire field stand counts are.
You're just taking like an average of
just a few areas, yeah. And what's kind of cool about this drone is it flies the entire field, and then the imagery is uploaded to the software, and it tells you the stand counts
and it counts
in
it for
every area in the field, and it actually counts every single plant.
Do we know how like accurate that is, or like is there a margin of error on that?
So like if you go onto the software and click on one of those points, it pulls up a image of the I guess the plants, and each plant has a little square around it. So you can visually look at that and see here's each plant that it used to calculate stand. So that's one of the cool things. It's also able to identify weeds, insects, disease, nutrient deficiencies, and can in many cases tell you what particular weed that is.
Without ever having to go out there and...
Without having to go out there, it can identify it just based on repetitive programming of that software,
like machine learning sort of thing.
Machine learning and teaching it how to identify particular issues in the field. But if say the software doesn't identify it, you can click on that image and zoom down in on it, and you can probably identify it.
Exactly what it is.
So yeah, so that's pretty cool.
So Troy, how long have you been either a farmer or family farm?
Yeah, it's been a family farm. I mean, I've been farming ever since with my dad for as long as I can.
As long as you can remember.
Yeah, and stuff. And I've probably been farming on my own now since Dad retired. It's been probably about 15 years.
Yeah.
And stuff. And I have my youngest boy is out there with us now and stuff, but. So it's been quite a while. We started pretty much when I took over. We started heading in the precision planting direction.
Yeah. What would you say is the most like major change from when you were a kid, like, and as far as like advancements in technology, what has had the biggest impact on? I mean, on your farming operation?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I really like is the auto steer.
Yeah.
And stuff. That's probably driving straight was not a good thing to try to do and stuff when my dad could, but that was probably one of the bigger things. But all the technology on the planter,
yeah,
has been a big change in how we do things with, knowing, being able to measure everything that we're doing, and then knowing that that's what it's actually doing.
And knowing for sure.
And stuff versus, the old way and stuff. You really didn't know if it was actually planting that many plants or not, because kind of like you said, the drone technology's pinpointing every plant and stuff, and that technology is in the planter itself already and stuff, where it's pinpointing every seed. You can see each one dropping.
So, and you're on the ProFarm program with us, correct?
Yes.
So what made you decide to go with that? Like, how was that process?
Well, we've been doing we've had a lot of the precision technologies. I mean, we've upgraded and stuff as things have gotten better for quite a few years, and we've been with a few different services. And one of the biggest things that we kind of were getting with when we were doing all this, we started collecting all this data.
Yeah.
But we really didn't know what to do with it, or even how to interpret it.
You just had all this information.
Yeah, and that was, the first few years we were kind of just collecting data. But, we weren't able to really utilize it for our benefit. And, some of the other services, we're offering to do a lot of things with it. But then they didn't really, you kind of needed to know what you wanted out of it. But we didn't know what we wanted to know and stuff because it was all new.
And they didn't come with a Wesley to show you
what
to do with that information?
Yeah, they didn't really do that. And so when we started with Wesley and the co-op and stuff, he was seemed to be more interactive with us to, maybe you want to know this or you want to know that. And he would bring up the maps and the paperwork showing, here's
how to interpret the data.
Yeah, and stuff. So that's probably been the biggest thing is, just you're amassing so much data. And, as a farmer, you're kind of strung thin as it is trying to make all these other decisions, but then have to try to interpret that all this raw data and stuff where, like somebody like Wesley can kind of put it into more of a user-friendly
presentation
format.
Sort of
yeah, and stuff. It helps make some of the decisions a lot easier than to try to spend all that time trying to condense it into something that you can use, productively.
So Wesley, do you have like any kind of cost benefit information on like the ProFarm or maybe some like the individual services?
Yeah. So that was kind of one of the advantages of putting this trial together that we did with Troy. This just variable rate versus uniform rate, and so that 5 to 12 bushel per acre increase by doing that, definitely pays for itself, especially if we're talking about using the same amount of product, and in some cases we might be using less product.
Just depends on the individual situation.
It depends on the field. Yeah, there's so much variability from field to field and within the field that it's just going to depend on the field. But on average, we can use the same amount of product and see a potential increase, yield increase, because we're just putting the product where it needs to go. So, like for example, you have the highest yielding area of a field. If you go out and flat rate that, there's a good chance that area is limited. It's not going to produce what it could produce. So we're gonna essentially increase population or increase the rate of fertilizer in that area and cut back in the poorer parts of the field. And that poorer ground, maybe it doesn't even matter what you do to it. It's just going to yield the same no matter what. So we're saving on inputs there.
So we're not wasting the resources where it's not going to matter, essentially.
Yep, and just kind of redistributing that. So it was actually a little over a year ago, I was looking at the grid samples that we've done in the past, and I ended up looking at about 60,000 acres of some of the grid sample results. And particularly the ones that needed fertilizer. So grid sample results that needed fertilizer, and I looked at the variable rate, the basically as applied of phosphorus and ag lime. Those were our two biggest in regards to what we do via grid sampling and variable rate. Those would be our highest volume. So I looked at those two and compared that variable rate application with just a uniform rate application. So if we were to go out and composite sample, which just would be like going out, soil sampling, getting one sample, and having one phosphorus test result to go off of, and one pH test to go off of, versus a grid sample that's like 64 soil test results on a 160 acre field, for 2.5 acre grid. So by going through that, on the phosphorus, on the 1152O, I found that there was a $9 per acre savings over that 4-year period. So grid samples, typically every 4 years we want to regrid. So across that 60,000 acres, there was a $9 per acre savings on 1152O. On ag lime, there was a $9 per acre savings, or around $9 per acre savings as well. So out of the two, $18, and that more than pays for grid sampling. And so, we're using less fertilizer and kind of being more efficient with that application. But I think the savings is one thing, but actually increasing the yield is, I think, where it really starts to show, because we are applying the fertilizer where it's needed and not where it's not needed. I've looked at a lot of grid sample results over the years, and what I've seen on most of them is those better yielding parts of the field have the lowest fertility levels. And so basically you go out for years and flat rate that field.
Yeah.
And you pull more nutrients in those better parts of the field. So those better parts of the field have lower soil test results or soil
that
test
makes sense.
data. So yeah, we're just, with that, we're putting more on in those areas and just optimizing it for better yield, and saving in those areas that probably have a really high soil test value because it's been over applied for years.
So have you noticed, Troy, like these things that he's saying, either save on inputs, get more yield out of it? Is that your experience from using the program?
Yeah, we've probably cut back in a few areas in our fertilization. In some cases, we've actually probably increased, because we have some fairly good bottom ground.
Yeah.
That maybe we weren't putting enough out there because, like he was saying, the yields went up, they take more nutrients out, and we weren't necessarily putting it back to raise a better yield and stuff. And so to some degree, we've actually probably increased the amount of fertilizer we've been putting on compared to what we used to.
Yeah.
And stuff, just because our yields have gone up and stuff. So yeah, to some degree, we do a little bit of grid sampling and stuff. We did a little bit different type of sampling this year. We went and picked the low and the high 25%.
Yeah, essentially zone sampling, 3 zones.
Yep, and this year just to kind of try to get a little bit more than just a grid, a one sample for the whole field deal, to try to change variable rate our stuff. And we've done some grid sampling in the 2.5 acre, I believe it was, in the past. So we try to utilize some of that stuff. We like to kind of like he was saying, spread it out over, instead of grid sampling every year type deal. We
Every
want to
couple
spread
years.
it out, and we do the same thing with all our other sampling.
So you've been using the precision ag services for about 3 years. Is there any concern that in the next 5 or 10 years that maybe some of this technology won't either be serviced or be around? What's the longevity of some of these things that we're offering?
So I would say at least the products and services on the precision side that we offer, I don't plan on those things will be here in 5 to 10 years. I know several years back that was a big question.
Yeah.
Is precision ag here to stay? And just here recently, I don't think I've been asked that question that specific question in
there's
general.
whole companies built off of just precision ag now. So
there's millions and millions of dollars being pumped into software development, into hardware technology, and no, I don't see anything going anywhere. We have some, for example, soil moisture sensors that are 10 plus years old, and they're just as relevant today as they were 10 years ago. So I think probably more than anything, your hardware is actually going to be the one thing that might become outdated. But like I said, those soil moisture sensors are 10 plus years old, and they still tell you what the soil moisture level is in the field. So software side, I mean, it's just constant building of improvements and automation, and that's just the software itself is just going to keep getting better and faster.
Probably do more and more from your cell phone than you ever thought was possible.
Oh yeah, I use it a lot more and stuff. Even like the soil moisture stuff. I mean, we're use our smartphones just to pull up the data, every day to see
what's going
where
on,
the moisture levels are, whether we need to turn the water on or not, and stuff compared to what we even just a few years ago, used to more or less just do it all on the computer at home. But now while you're sitting in the yard, you just pop it on and say, oh yeah,
see it. Mm-hmm. All right, guys. So every episode, I asked the guests to give us kind of a farm fail, like something that they've done that was kind of embarrassing, kind of funny, some kind of mistake you made. And Wesley, I hear that you have a good one. So why don't you tell me about that?
Well, definitely not proud of this by any means. So back when I was working back home, working for my dad at the farm and ranch type retail business, we had some dry fertilizer spreaders, and to move those dry fertilizer spreaders, we just hooked onto a skid loader that had a little hook on the front of it.
I'm assuming that wasn't like an OSHA approved hook?
Probably not. It was like my grandpa's invention, probably more than anything. Just welded it together and had a little hook on it, and we'd go up to the spreader and just lift it up just a little bit so that gravity would hold that onto the hook. And I was going off of the scales, and I was going off the scales the wrong way because I was going kind of down a hill, and so the dry spreader was in front of me going down the hill, and it's not like a big hill or anything, just a very subtle slope. And and whenever I hit the edge of that scale with the skid loader, it just bounced enough that the dry spreader came loose.
Like popped off the top of the hook.
It seemed like just a slow speed. It was slow motion for me.
Yeah. And
it started rolling towards my truck, and I was like, oh man. And for some reason I was like, it's too late, I can't get it. So I just kind of sat there and just watched it just rolling in my truck, and it just jolted my truck. And then there's this nice little triangle right on the back of the bumper, where the fertilizer comes out of the back of that spreader. So
do you still have that truck?
I still have that truck, and I still have that triangle on the back of the bumper.
It's a memento.
Yeah, a good way to preserve the memories.
Yeah.
All right, so we've talked a bit about ProFarm. Why don't you tell us a little bit more? What are the actual services that somebody can get as part of the whole, like if they do the ProFarm program, or like maybe the individual services that are available?
Yeah, so Troy's been on this for, well, as long as we've been working together, so about 4 years going into this season. And actually, prior to ProFarm, it was called the Whole Farm Program, and so when we started with it, it was to offer variable rate prescriptions, unlimited prescriptions of seed, nitrogen, dry fertilizers, and even irrigation, and then also analyze that data and the results, so that it'd be a continual improvement every year, because I think every operation and even every field is a little bit different. So we wanted to be able to analyze that and just continue to change and improve what we're doing on the variable rate side, and just not just variable rate, but analysis of hybrids and varieties. What's the best hybrids for you on your operation, and even breaking those hybrids down by zone. If it's dry land zones, how do those hybrids do irrigated, or on a dry land field? How does that hybrid do in the best yielding part of the field, and how does it do on the poorest ground? So just kind of breaking that information out to just kind of work with the grower and just continue to improve on that for their operation. But also, I guess within that 3 or 4 years, we also added satellite imagery as part of that. So that's included in that ProFarm as well. And I think that's because more than anything, it's just become more readily available, like we kind of talked about earlier. But then you can add products and services. We have several other products and services like zone and grid sampling and soil moisture management. Just a weather station. If somebody wants a weather station and wants to be able to pull up weather for their house or a farm that's maybe 20 miles away, and they want to see what the weather is there, put those up, and then drone imagery, aircraft imagery. Those are kind of some of the things that you can add on to ProFarm.
Okay.
And yeah, so ProFarm, I think we started using that logo and brand.
It's been pretty recent.
Hearing about 3 or 4 months ago, and you actually put that together.
I did, yeah.
Looks pretty good too. So
I know, I see it on your shirt.
Yeah.
It's the first time I saw the shirt. It looks pretty cool.
So
do you have a weather station out at your place?
I do not. And so I know we talked about it.
So you're slacking.
Yeah, we talked about it. We just haven't gotten it done yet and stuff. But yeah,
But you've got the soil moisture thing, correct?
Yeah, we use soil moistures on our irrigated acres and stuff. So we use that through the ProFarm also and stuff. And we've been talking about putting a weather station and everything up to help with that.
Yeah.
And stuff.
But he's got quite a bit, as far as, he may not have a weather station, but high tech planner.
Yeah.
And Y drops.
Yeah,
is another thing that you've started to do.
Yeah, we use the Y drops and stuff on our sprayer and stuff. We've been doing some in season fertilization to split up the application a little bit so we can make it more efficient and hopefully add some extra bushels and stuff too. And we've seen some pretty drastic results from that and stuff. So we're continuing to.
So that's definitely something you'd recommend.
Yeah. I was gonna say we've seen some pretty good results there, and we're continuing to push further forward on that and stuff. That area, trying to see what we can do to make more improvements and get a better return on that side of it too and stuff. And we use the precision side even on our combine and stuff on the yield side and stuff, so it all trying to get everything to sort of flow into one centralized location so that we can make all that information work together and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So if there was anybody on the fence of using some more services like that either Wesley might offer or somebody with Precision Ag, is there any, I don't know, words of advice, or is there like your thoughts on using these Precision Ag services?
Well, I would say that one of the better things would be to actually get somebody, that you can give that data to kind of bring it into more of a user-friendly format for the farmer, because like I said, there's so much data that you're collecting anymore and stuff, and if you don't know
what to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, all you're doing is collecting data, and I mean, we sort of, that's the direction we started out. When we started, was we just started getting all this data, and it was like we really didn't know how to utilize it and stuff. And I mean, we were a little on the fence for spending the money to get people to to understand our data, but after doing it and stuff, it's it's
proved its value to you.
Yeah, it's definitely helped streamline and bring in that data and make it into something more user friendly and stuff for us to make decisions based on and stuff. So I would say definitely if you're collecting the data, you should be
trying somebody who knows how to use it.
Yeah, try to figure out how to utilize it the best.
Yeah, they I don't know, several years back, I think kind of the norm was to print off the yield maps in a 3-ring binder and put them up on the shelf.
Yep.
Call them pretty maps. And I mean, more than anything now, we need to take that and utilize that information to help make some decisions and help increase return on investment.
And so Wesley, obviously you would love if every single farmer signed up for the ProFarm program, but if there was something that you would hope somebody would take away from this, something that they would at least give a try, what would you want people to at least to give a shot to get their foot in the door?
So I would say just this on-farm research trial that we talked about, pretty much anybody can do it if they have a yield monitor. Ideally have a way to record what they're doing when they're planting. So if we're looking at seeding population and nitrogen nitrogen rate, record that so that we have an actual as-applied record of it. But more importantly is having good yield data or having the ability to record your yield data and putting a on-farm research trial together. And it doesn't have to be variable rate versus uniform rate. Just anything you're interested in for your operation, doing one of those trials, and just that's a good way to get your foot in the door.
That way they don't have to take your word for it.
Exactly.
See for yourself sort of thing.
Yep.
Well, I would like to thank you, Troy, and thank you, Wesley, for coming in, but I think that's about all the time we have. And I'd like to thank everybody for listening. We really appreciate it, and wherever you do listen, make sure you hit subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. We drop a new episode every 2 weeks on Fridays. You can find those on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube. And as always, I'm Nolan Fast, host of the Grow Podcast, and all of us at Farmers Cooperative would like to encourage you to keep growing.